Yeah, for sure. So look, when developing products, we didn't want to just match meat one for one, but we took a look at what we hate about meat. Because I mean, you can have a filet mignon that's great, but if you really think about it long enough, you're going to find flaws in it. And when you talk about the yum profile, what that is if you consider, I mean, I assume that you still remember, 18 months is not that long. So imagine chewing into a really succulent piece of steak. Look, the best one you've ever had. And the first bite that you take, all of the juices come oozing out of that meat. But then as you keep chewing it in your mouth, you rupture all the cells and you get to a point where you have just a sawdusty consistency in your mouth. And you just want to swallow that down so that you can get to the next, yummy piece. But with plant-based protein, you can kind of engineer the protein the way you want it to behave. And we are able to have better water absorption, which means that you don't ever get to a point where you have a really sawdusty consistency in your mouth. And so the juiciness retention and the flavor release is prolonged in comparison. So yeah, this is what we call our extended yum profile, because you have the beautiful experience of eating a steak throughout your eating experience.
So you guys very kindly sent me one of your filet mignon steaks a while back, maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah, something like that. It was, I assume, one of the earlier prototypes.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm happy to say that we've improved upon it, but I'm curious to hear your feedback regardless.
Yeah, so it was. I mean, this is not a plug for your product, but I very much enjoyed it. I thought it was. I mean, I almost felt not qualified to cook it because I could see that it's. I mean, you pitched it to be a very premium product. Haven't you? And you shipped it in this very nice box with all of these instructions on, we'll talk about your brand in a minute, but in there were some instructions on this is how to get the best out of it. And I devote a lot of thinking time to cooking, and I cook several times a day, but I still felt like I'd love to experience this in the hands of a great chef. So
I just wanted to say that it's super interesting that you felt to some extent intimidated by the product, because that's one of the main things we are trying to address. Because when people go out and buy a filet mignon to cook at home, or a ribeye, or whatever, steak, it's usually expensive. And then if you're really not savvy on how to prepare it, you might have a lot of, appliances like your fancy meat thermometer that is connected to your smartphone and whatever. But the issue is that meat is so unforgiving. And if you go that few degrees above its perfect medium rare temperature, you will get to a point where it's not perfect anymore. And it's not even close to perfect. It's far from perfect because it gets dry super quickly. And when I was talking before on how we are trying to engineer a better product when making it with plant protein, this is one of the things that was super important to us. Make a product that's not intimidating, that, if you come home after work a bit tired, you chuck it in a pan, you forget about it for a few minutes, it goes above what would be considered a perfect internal temperature for beef. It's not ruined, it's still good. Obviously, anyone can burn or, dry it out a bit, but not to an extent as you would with beef. And hopefully this will make it more user-friendly so that you can think about, I want to have something nice, but I don't want to worry about it too much.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, when we think about meat alternatives or alt food in general, it's tempting to think that it's really just a one dimension, and the thing that you're trying to replace is somewhere on that axis, and then the thing that you're making to replace it is somewhere else, and that one axis is flavor. Does it taste? But actually, what you're bringing out is that there are multiple dimensions. So how forgiving is it to cook? That's one dimension. How healthy it is, which again is multiple dimensions. How much saturated fat is in it? How much cholesterol? Yada yada. What it looks like in the plate. That how fibrous it is. How many of these things are you considering as you're trying to optimize your product?
So obviously you can't tackle everything, but we try to listen to what we think consumers want, to try to talk to as much of them as possible. But the main thing for us is obviously try to create the best possible flavor so that people are satisfied trying it out. Make sure that it's more user-friendly and that it improves on some drawbacks of meat, such as I mentioned previously. And the health aspect is also important to us. So this is something that we are tackling bit by bit. but we really made a conscious decision on not using saturated fats such as coconut oil or palm oil in our products. We are now using sunflower oil because it has such a low level of saturated fats, and we feel that it's important that if we are bringing something new to the market, that we are conscious of that as well. Obviously, there's still some sodium in it, there's still some other things, but making these small and very rational choices on what we want to strive for is important, also in the context of, as I was saying before, this humanitarian approach. Because if we are making new food for the new generation of people, why not improve it so that they have a better life eating it as well?